All right, and we are here live again, back at it with SampleServe Masterclass Wednesdays. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching, taking the time out of your day. These are very helpful videos, especially if you're in the environmental industry. I am Joshua Paul. I am the marketing director and product manager of SampleServe, and I have with us Russell Schindler. He's the founder and CEO of SampleServe. Say hi, Russell.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Russell's got quite a many years experience in the environmental industry, specifically, going out and sampling, project manager, owning businesses, all kinds of things. And today we're going to be talking about some pain points. This is going to be the subject of pain points and how they can be solved with digital tools. We like to bring you on here on Wednesdays to, we bring on some experts in the industry. We bring on some users of our platform, and we also talk about industry trends and some tips and tricks of the app as well. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the chat. We can get to it during the show, or even after this is over, you can leave a question and comment in the chat, and we'll get to it afterwards as well. And if you know anybody this would be helpful to, give this link a share. All these links remain live afterwards as well. And what app are we talking about? We're talking about something called Sample ENV. This is SampleServe's environmental platform. It's mostly for environmental professionals. It's also for drinking water facilities, wastewater facilities. Pretty much if you're sampling something, it can handle it. If you're putting something in a bottle and sending it to a lab, this can facilitate the data collection and transfers of all that. So let's get into some pain points, Russell. Challenges for project managers. You've done this job yourself. You started, SampleServe started out as a sampling company. So you were in the office setting up these sampling events, communicating with labs, talking to field techs, all that stuff.
Yeah, there's lots of pain points. And we kind of systematically solved them one by one. Weren't you going to do a PowerPoint share as well?
Yeah. Oh, it was this whole time. I'm sorry. Here's something to look at, everybody.
You're clicking through thinking we're all seeing the same thing. Got it.
You didn't miss much, don't worry.
Yeah. Project managers, there's different categories, right? And that's one of the nice things about SampleServe. It's not just for one type of worker. It's for the whole ecosystem. So, and really the first part is the project managers. They have to communicate with multiple people. They got to communicate with the lab. They got to communicate with the field technician. Sometimes they got to communicate with the customer. Most times they got to communicate with the customer. But there's just this way. Used to be you had to kind of do them all separately, or maybe you copied them all on an email. But we've kind of helped keep everybody on the same page at the same time. So if you make a small change in the scope of work, everybody knows about it right away. So that's really one of the big things that helps with that communication, makes it a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
And then, one of the common things that I've seen when people don't really have like an efficient, easy to use, and that's the key, easy to use scheduling system, is that, they're scheduled to do 4 quarters of sampling in a year, right? And then in the first quarter, they get a month behind, right? Or maybe it's just 3 weeks behind. And so then the second quarter gets pushed back a little bit, and that gets delayed 4 weeks. And then the third quarter, the next thing you know, you're doing your third quarter sampling in November, and, you're like, well, I can't do a fourth quarter a month later. And so you end up actually leaving money on the table and not really keeping with the schedule you're supposed to on that particular sampling event. Could be some regulatory problems there as well. And so just kind of keeping that stuff scheduled properly, being able to schedule them all out, and then keeping everybody on the same page so you can actually tell, like, all right, these guys are too busy. I'm going to have to bring in some other people to do the sampling. And then the thing that I, as a SampleServe started out as a sampling company, the problem that I solved for ourselves was all the paper, right? Writing down things on paper forms, filling out sample bottle labels by hand. I had labs like literally call me up and complain about my penmanship. That, I'd answer the phone, SampleServe, and they'd be like, could you please talk to a Russell Schindler and ask him to write his 3s and his 5s better? True story. And I was like, yes, I will let him know,
Right.
so that the paper is just a big problem because it's not just the penmanship. It's the fact that you got to go back later and actually enter the data.
Right.
It's time consuming.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons how SampleServe got started was, solving some of these core problems of communication, paper-based workflows, and data entry. So SampleServe, do everything in one place. We like to say we're the one-stop shop, one hub, all in one hub for communication. You can communicate to your lab in the platform. You can communicate to your field techs. You can communicate to your stakeholders. The stakeholders can have access, and pretty much everybody involved in the entire data flow process can be all in one place, all on the same page at the same
And
time.
they see what they need to see. Like obviously the laboratory doesn't need to see everything, but there's certain things that they do need to see, so they get to see that. And so they see what they need to see, and anything else is only viewable by the people who need to see that.
Right. And the nice thing is, automated scheduling recurring sampling events. We have a system built up so you can set up a sampling event, say it's quarterly. You can set that automatically to happen in, early first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, and it'll just automatically schedule itself. Same work scope, same go. You can edit something if you'd like, and it'll also give you alerts and alarms if something was missed.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll point out about the scheduling is, the schedules that you put in there are simply the target dates, right? So if you say, hey, I'm going to do this on, March 3rd, but you don't get to it till the 5th, the 3rd, you don't have to change the date. It's going to stay up there as needing to be done. But when we do the sampling, or you do the sampling, it's going to show up that you collected it on March 5th, right? So the target dates just are exactly that, target dates. You can move them up or move them back. You can go in there and actually change the date if you want to, but it's not really necessary to actually physically go in there and change the date.
Right.
It'll record the day you actually do the work.
Yeah. And the most important part about, setting up your work scopes on the platform is that it communicates that effectively to your field staff through the field app. Now let's transfer over to difficulties for the field staff, because there's going to be, this is you've been out in the field many times, half your life, I'd say, right?
Yeah, at least that.
And you know all the problems of the field. It's especially back in the day where paper was your literal only option.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
So the first part is, making sure you have all the paper you're going to need while you're out there. So if you're filling out paper forms, or, I can remember way back in the day, we actually used the little yellow field books. Problem with the field books is there's no form that you sometimes had to kind of create your own form in the book. People would, create different forms for, different people, and it was just hard to interpret all the data. So forms kind of became the norm because they literally formatted everything properly. But then people would or wouldn't fill out the forms completely. They skipped things. There's no way to really make people enter the data.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, they not put as many decimal points as somebody else might. And so it was just formatting the data entry. Paper forms were a little bit better than the yellow field books in terms of formatting, but still there was a problem, and there was no way to compel people to fill everything out. And then with a tablet, right, every mobile device now has a GPS built into it. Well, if we know the sample location and we have that GPS in our tablet, it can walk you right there, just like, plugging into grandma's address.
Let's stick to the difficulties for right now, Russell.
Pardon me?
Let's stick to the difficulties right now. Finding sample locations.
Finding a location is a problem, right? I can't tell you how many times I have spent hours looking for locations, and you're just like, I can't find it. It's not there because it's overgrown, or it's underneath a foot of snow.
Right.
Where we live, there's a foot of snow out there right now. And then the data entry problems, right? The not putting in the right decimal numbers, or just not being able to read the writing, right?
Right.
That's really the biggest one.
And eventually that data collected on paper in the field has to become digitized at some point.
Yeah.
It has to go into a computer at some point. And so it just makes sense to, start it out digitally in the field.
Yeah, we used to do these big jobs where we would have like 4 people all go out and do,
Data
collect
collection.
data all day long at these big projects, and we'd have
Yeah.
4 or 5 people at a time. And just to be nice, I'd be like, everyone give me your data forms. And I would spend another hour or two that night, or sometimes get up early the next morning, and I would enter all their data.
Right.
And it was very time consuming. And the big part of the problem was sometimes it'd be like, what the heck does that say? And so I wouldn't even be able to enter it all, because I'd have to get with that person and go, what is that? Is that a 7 or a 9?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it just makes sense to, start the data digitally at the time of collection.
Yeah.
It's only more time consuming that too. And then with the finding locations, with GPS, you can mark the GPS location of that sample location in the field app. You can upload the GPS coordinates in the work scope tool when you're making the setup. And then also you can take pictures of that sample location, and you can take it in different angles, and you can show stuff in the background, so you can use those pictures to find that location super easily. Say it's oh, here's the tree, and then trees right in front of it at this angle, trees next to it at this angle. It's right here. You start digging, you find it.
Two things that I'll say on that is the photos, right? Take cross references, one from one angle, one to another. It really helps, especially with snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Saved me a ton of time.
Yeah.
I mean, days worth of time over the years.
Right.
And the other thing is on the digital data entry, I can't tell you how many times when mobile app that we had, somebody would type in MW-1, right? Then the next person would be just like MW1 with no dash.
Right.
And then somebody else was capital M, small W -1. And as that data was being entered, all of a sudden you've got 3 or 4 variations of MW1, right? With digital, you don't have to type in that sample ID anymore. You just click on it, and whatever it was typed in years ago, whether it be with a dash or no dash, that's what it is today. So it's a kind of an overlooked issue, but it's an extremely important issue.
Yeah, it's like one of those problems that you just get so used to, you don't even think it's a problem.
Right.
It's just like, that's just the way it is. Yep. And then with data validation, a paper form in the field isn't going to control what you enter, what you write down. It doesn't know the difference if you didn't write down something. Whereas a tablet, it has built-in, measures that say, hey, you can't advance until you type these things in.
Yeah.
And those are all customizable in the app. And there's all kinds of customizable things. It'll tell you if you're too far away from the sample location that you're supposed to be at. It'll tell you, hey, your depth of product is deeper than your depth of bottom. Because it's smart. It'll warn you about these things. It'll not let you advance if you don't put in required items and stuff like that. Whereas a field form on paper, it doesn't know the difference. So you're going to get back in the office and be like, well, shoot, this is wrong. I got to go back out there.
Yeah.
And then also instant upload. You don't got to retype all the data back in the office, which is, amazing. And for the lab, we do have lab solutions as well. We have a lab portal where labs can go in, they can spot check their customers, they can upload their sample, their test parameters for the customers to choose from. It's not needed, but all labs can do this for no cost. Yep. And we can also assist them with, digital chain of custody transfers, because in the field, all the chain of custodies are going to be generated digitally and can be sent to the lab right when sampling is done in the field. And then,
and if they're participating, one of the things that's the labs that do participate with us is, they're wondering if that project's on track, on schedule, right? Well, if they're participating, they can actually tell when the project's being commenced according to schedule or not. And then when that chain of custody is generated and ready to go to the lab, they can actually see it before the samples even arrive. So
which is
they
great.
may ship in UPS. They can actually pull up that chain of custody and see what's coming in tomorrow.
Yeah, they'll know exactly what their work is entailed for the next day.
Yeah, and we're working on some ways to even notify them whether it's something with a short hold time or maybe it's a rush sample as well. So
yeah. And there's all kinds of options. They can generate their own or create their own customized receiving checklist. You can scan in all the bottles with the QR codes that are printed out. It makes it real easy, and you can transfer all that data into their LIMS system, no problem. As well. So it's real easy for labs. And then the last part is unnecessary costs of reporting. There's a lot of methods that people always come up with their own reporting methods. Hey, I got a guy, or usually I throw it into this system and it takes me a couple days and I finagle with it and it comes out the way I like it. And I got this text down here. Here's a suite of graphics for a typical project that you're going to go out, take samples. Let's say you're going to do 12 samples, and you want to do a couple contours, a box map, and some graphs and some tables for it. Not using SampleServe, using other methods. This could take you a week and could cost you over $1,000.
Yeah, $1,000. Even if we're 1,000, that would be cheap. I mean, it's probably more in the 2 to 3 range, just for a quarterly groundwater monitoring event.
Exactly. Yeah.
And as you indicated there, the biggest problem is a bottleneck, right? There's usually only 1 or 2 people in the office, if you're lucky, and you're not sharing with some other office. Where you got to get in the queue, right? Like, you want your graphics done through the AutoCAD or GIS person, you got to fill out a form, put it in the queue, and they'll get to it when they get to it. And if they're on vacation, so are you. So, you're waiting until they get back. And so that's the biggest problem, really, is, using the SampleServe software. Anybody with a computer can do the high quality graphics like you see there as easily as the AutoCAD person can. Actually, way easier.
Some of these software programs are pretty expensive too. They charge you by seat, and it's up in the tens of thousands of dollars.
And one thing that deserves being pointed out here is that all that data collection stuff we talked about is actually free of charge. The only thing we actually charge for are these graphics. So
this part
all the app and everything, the project management tool, it's all free of charge.
Right. Yeah. So, if you opt out of the reporting, we don't think you will, though, because of just how easy it is. You can go out, plan your projects, collect data in the field digitally, and use our tools. And we assume that you're going to be, uploading that data back up and creating these reports, because it's once you figure out how easy it is, it's a no-brainer, especially when you can create the same suite of graphics like we have here. And it's only going to take you about 20 minutes, and it's going to cost you around $120, depending on, the price that we give you. We give volume discounts. If you're a big corporation doing lots of samples, we're going to give you the best price out there. And we charge you per sample, so that the price grows as your projects grow, as well as scalable. So small companies, not as big a charge. Larger companies, a little more, but it's scale and it's representative of what you're taking, what you're doing.
Yeah, and you can create your templates and your formats. Everything's going to come out with your logo on it. And then it's based on the number of samples you're collecting as well. And there's no startup fees, there's no monthly fees, there's no annual fees. It's only when you collect samples. So if you're only sampling once a year, you're only going to get an invoice once a year.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So like a typical project like this, you go out, take 10 samples. We quote you at $10 per sample, and you go put the data back in. You can generate these box maps and contours very easily.
$100.
Click of a button. It's going to be about $100, $120, depending on how many samples you took.
Yep.
So, and you're going to have it out the same day, which is the nice thing. No waiting.
Yep.
So, I think, we covered it, just the basics. There's a lot more pain points that we can talk about. We can go on forever about, all the situations that we've heard, some of our users that they've been in, and that the problems that they're trying to solve, and the problems that, they have solved by using SampleServe. And, if you really want to dig in deeper into how the platform works, we have a virtual demo on our website. Go to SampleServe.com, virtual demo. You see the button right there. And it'll take you through a couple of videos. They're very short. It'll take about 20 minutes to go through the whole thing, but they're all separated into separate videos based on, user applications and user needs. And I highly suggest you watch that. And when you're done, you can either schedule a demo. We'll take you on. We'll set you up a project, get you going. You can be out in the field within the next day, probably. Go out the field sampling with SampleServe, and we'll help you along the way. There's how-to videos. There's all kinds of help. There's 24/7 customer support, and we like to see sign up and get going. So with that, I think we'll rest the masterclass till next week.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See ya.